And we're live with the new episode of Campaign Countdown. In fact, it's our second part on Jack Irons' Steel Cowboy issue number 3, where we're sitting down with the creator, Cowboy Steel, Cody Fernandez, to talk a little bit about more about the character and the settings and kind of dive more into the story itself. So thank you, Cody, for joining us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me as always, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Well, definitely, man. Thank you, thank you. And just to introduce myself, I'm Michael. I'm also joined by my fellow co-founder Matt.
How's it going, guys?
And so let's dive into this, man. No need to stay on occasion. Let's dive into some Jack, man.
Alrighty.
So we're in the middle of a campaign, Indiegogo. I believe you've got about 20 days left. Is that right?
Oh, let me see. I think we just hit 19. Yeah, 19
19.
as of
Okay.
some point today. So
Okay.
just under 3 weeks. Just under 3 weeks left.
And
That's
what
good.
percentage are we at
That's
right
good.
now?
What? Excuse me?
What percentage are we at right now for the fulfillment?
Let's see. It would be 46.9%. So
Okay, so you're
basically
getting close to the
47%.
50%. Getting close to the
Yeah.
50% mark, though.
Yeah,
So
right
we're near the
there.
halfway mark, but we got a ways to go. So we really need to get it out there. Is the main thing.
Yeah, that's the hope. But again, it's timing has been
It's a
interesting with
tough.
this
Well,
campaign
yeah,
from
that's
the
the thing.
beginning.
Yeah, who could
So
have guessed what world events would come and put a dent in things. And I know it's a hard time for people out there right now. So I definitely get that. We hope where you can that you can give where you can. Even
yeah,
if
no,
you one person,
exactly.
we do appreciate every little bit that gets towards Jack. Making it.
Well, that's a big thing too right now. I mean, right now my soft goal is if I can hit that 50% by the end, I'll be pretty damn stoked with considering the situation. Anything more than that, of course, will have a complete difference in mood. Instead of just stoked, I'll be blown away. But
Right.
so I'm trying to temper expectations while also working hard to by far exceed them. And it's gonna be what it's gonna be, and Jack's not going anywhere. It's just again timing. So who knows if it's this round, that would make things a lot easier and quicker and keep us moving, which is exactly what we want. But if it's not, it doesn't stop moving. It just moves a little slower. So
It
uh,
means we just got to figure out a different path for it, maybe.
exactly. A couple other ways I can go about it too coming. But at the moment, right now, it's doing fine, honestly, and there's still good chances for a quick funding. Usually the last 3 days hits pretty hard. So at the very least, I think I'll hit my soft goal of that 50% through those last few days. But nonetheless, there's a chance for funding too at that point. So who knows? Who knows what the world's going to look like tomorrow, let alone a couple weeks. So we'll
Exactly.
find
We
out.
might even try out, reaching out to some, people, some checking on some streams and things, different people who you might not normally reach out to, maybe even if it's a long shot. It's worth a shot at the very least.
I've been doing that.
Okay.
Usually, if it's
Okay.
a long
Good.
shot, it is a long shot, as in you will not hear anything, and so you have to either badger, which I don't like doing. It's kind of
That's yeah.
disrespectful, and the fact that they're not responding in the first place is a little bit of
Right.
disrespect. So it's kind of how desperate are you? And I'm not desperate. Our
Exactly.
work our work is great, and if folks just aren't aware of it yet, that's fine. But I am working hard. I've got hopefully April 7th. I've got something with Comic Book Club. They're a little bit bigger, so that's something I haven't reached out for before, and they were really cool. I got issue 1 and 2 in the hands of Donnie Cates and his girlfriend, so we'll see if
Nice.
they end up actually looking at that or not. I find it
That'd be
doubtful, but
dope.
she at least acknowledged that she had them, so that was cool.
That's awesome,
I
man.
just got to keep trying, and I keep looking for chances, and that's all you can do.
Man, well, you're doing a great job, man. You're one of the most vocal people out there, doing great work with these kind of comics. So, I definitely think you're putting in the hard work, man.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah, go for it.
no, I was gonna say, but why don't we kind of dive into the main subject of our talk today, which is we last time we talked a lot about the campaign itself, and we looked at the campaign page and the perks and what you kind of have on offer in that respect. But today, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about character and setting, and kind of dive into what makes Jack Iron such an interesting and unique comic. And,
Sounds good to me. I like that. For
nice.
folks interested, though, the campaign has changed. If the last time you saw it was only on the Wiki Countdown, the campaign page has been, I'm going to use the term streamlined. I cut a lot of the fat. There's a
Really?
new colored page on there as well, which came out amazing. Page 2, so page 1 and page 2 fully colored on there, so you can see what issue 3 is shaping to look like. And if you enjoy what we're talking about here, myself and Wiki would be mighty grateful if you take a look at the campaign page. If the characters and setting interest you, I can guarantee the price point alongside the options and the consistent, I'm going to use the term integrity that we've tried to put forward with our work, hopefully will be the hook that keeps you here and helps us continue to make the best of the Weird Space West.
That's some IronVerse integrity for you right there.
Speaking of the
Old IronVerse
Integrity.
speaking of the campaign, real quick,
Yeah.
what's about this this new perk that you just put in, the secret one?
That's not new. That's been there forever. That's been there since the beginning. It went out to anybody who backed the. It was my incentive for people to sign up for the email, and so I just made it public because I had like 100 and change people sign up for it. So I was like, okay, I'll make this perk limited to 100, and if we sell most of them, great, and then I'll release the rest publicly. Well, we sold 50 of them. And at that point, I was. It's been a while. I sent it out again and again to the email signups, and then I sent it out to the previous campaign signups. And eventually, after a couple weeks of doing that and not getting much movement, we made it public, just so that perk can hopefully be a nice little kick in the butt for the campaign total, because it's the best deal by far. You're saving basically $1, which, yeah, that's not a big deal. But then you get a free limited metal trading card. So and you actually save more if you get the issue 1 and 2 through the add-on through that perk. But it still only comes out to a couple bucks, but it does everything on offer besides the Steel and the Cowboy is a little bit cheaper if you go through that perk.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it just it's not new, but it did relatively recently become public.
Yeah, because I was just looking at it today. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, that's why I was limited. I was really hoping, if we could sell those, it's a boost to the campaign, and then it justifies my personal cost into making the trading cards. So, but we'll see. I mean, we sold half of them. That's pretty good, and that's almost a third of all backers. So that was kind of cool too. So. Just again, one day at a time, and that is another option for people. I try to make it not too easy. It's not the link I send out every time. It's one link that I've sent out a few different times. So trying to keep it limited also. But honestly, if it got sold out today really quickly because people heard about it, I would not cry.
Maybe I think I wouldn't either, man. That wouldn't be so bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it would not be so
bad. You got to look at it as the people who were on the mailing list had their chance. 50 of them got it.
Hey, man,
yeah, that's what I was doing. That's how I was looking at it. And if it's just sitting there otherwise, then, I'm going to print 100 of those cards either way. So might as well get the rest of them sold and off to people who enjoyed it or put the effort into finding the secret link to save $1 and get that extra exclusive piece of merch, which isn't available in any other tier either. Only the people who got it through that secret link can get that card. So hopefully that was a nice little incentive for collectors in particular, but you never know. You can just put your best foot forward and see if people like the smell of it or not.
Hey, man, your feet are looking like daisies over here, man, with all the
right.
and, excellent stories you got coming through, man. If you
feet hygiene is key to comics.
If you pardon my imperfect analogy there. No, but no, I always like to say, man, you are one of the most vocal guys out there, and you do a lot for your audience. You're always engaging with your readers.
I try to. I definitely try to, because like 98% of the time it's fun. It's good fun, and I'm learning from somebody else, and so that's really important to me. Is trying to figure out how to make all of this work together.
Well, I want to start off our discussion tonight by kind of just asking a very simple question that kind of can expand and maybe lead out into some other things here. But that is, who is Jack Irons as a person?
As a person, it's a lot of people. The goal would be to communicate as wide a swath of human opinion, experience, and beliefs as possible while being inside of one body. Um, Very tough. Arrogant in a lot of ways too to think that a writer could do that, but it's a fun exploration, if not a very flawed attempt at trying to bring this thing, called human history and human experience and human action into a goofy focal lens to help us explore some of the harder parts of it and some of the better parts of it and how they work together and coexist and such. And so Jack is supposed to be the ultimate every man, every woman, basically. I don't know if he is. I don't know if I can succeed in that goal, but that is the goal. I'm trying to, he should have something within him that resonates with anybody. That would be my hope. So again, it's a hope, and it's a, again, it could be an arrogant one, but it's what we're trying. It's what I'm trying in particular. And so, as a person, Jack's a good man, just like I personally believe that the bulk of humanity are good people. He's not one to dive into excess cruelty for cruelty's sake, though he has memories of being people who have done that. So he also has an understanding of how that can occur, and why he decides now not to do that. Basically what makes him different from Vandal Savage, which Vandal Savage was very egotistical. I'm given this power, this immortality to rule. I'm better than everybody. Jack, since his huge swath of experience, he sees the same thing and says, I'm not better than anybody. If anything, I'm much worse. And so I should be trying to be better. And that's kind of where he sits. That's probably the best explanation to Jack I can give without folks just kind of going through and finding out what they think of him through the books.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up, the fact that he's kind of got all these experiences, past life experiences. So they've all shaped who he really has become when we see him in this story.
Yeah, like Dan Sacro, writer for Dobie Kroger and EIC for Mythoverse, he did a review recently of Jack, and he was talking about how he would have set up the story differently, but how he said he'd set up the story differently in issue 1 in particular does not communicate the Jack that I wanted to communicate properly. So in a way, sure, it wasn't what he wanted as the reader. I do know, I think I communicated how I wanted to as the writer. So that was kind of interesting. He wanted Jack to come off more of a hero. Jack's not a hero. He's an everyman. He can be a hero. He's on a way to maybe having a heroic journey, but currently he is not a hero. He has the flaws and problems and poor choices that any of us can make. So starting him off with a glorious, saving somebody from a wagon train getting destroyed or whatever. That's not the character I wanted to put forward. He's not that kind of hero. He's not the kind of, he's not the Punisher kind of hero either. He's somewhere in between. He's closer to Jonah Hex, and Hex would be a guy to save a damsel in distress, but it would have to be along his path. He doesn't go out of his way looking to save people, and that's kind of where Jack lies too, is that the problems come to him more than him going to the problems. And in fact, that's the whole IronVerse comics, that's the whole world, is that the problems very much came to us. And so we have to live with them and figure out how to move past them if possible.
Now, Now how long has it been? Has it been revealed yet? How many years since he's become immortal? That he's been walking, this new Earth?
Hasn't been revealed yet. It's mentioned slightly, the occurrence that triggered his memories and made him aware of his immortality. That's mentioned in issue 3. And in issue 1, the event that triggered it is actually in the comic. It's very subtle, but it's not so subtle if you look at how we presented it. But anywho, it's pretty subtle, I guess, for folks. And so it's being hinted. That's kind of more of a Jack doesn't know too much, so the readers can't really know too much either. As the writer, I do know basically how old he is, just like he knows how old he is. I do know what, again, the event that transpired it and what it meant for the greater universe and all that. I know that. Jack doesn't know that. There's a lot there, but he's about 250 years old. I put him. He fought in the War of 1812 with his father.
Oh, wow.
So he was about 14 at that time, and they both quote unquote died on the front lines. So that's, again, it's implied in issue 3. Issue 4 that might actually be directly explored. But yeah, he's about 250, 260 years old.
Wow.
By the time you're talking to him in the bar, it's about 264 years, because that's 2076. And most of issue 2, once we go back to him exploring and finding the little girl, that's about 2072, 2073. So it's he's a little bit younger. But yeah, so he's about that old.
Jaded then.
Yeah, he's very. He should be the most jaded character. Period. Nothing new under the sun, and that leads him to fall into habitual patterns, which help him travel through time a lot quicker as an immortal. And there's no decay or anything, so he doesn't worry too much about the physical costs. More about like, how do I not exist as me today? And so that's the drinking problem, the smoking, the chatting to people who aren't even listening, that kind of behavior. That's what we try to put forward. But yeah, he's a very old man, seen a lot of horrors, and in fact, since their timeline diverges at a little bit before 1910, basically from 1890 on, when things start getting really industrial, it goes more steampunk. It goes even faster because of the human cruelties that manifested Famine Inc., and then eventually war, and then eventually plague, and that culminated in Death's birth. But the honest bit is Jack's just an old man with a lot of memories, and really, it's the age isn't helping.
Poor Jack, man. He could use a break.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're working. That's the thing. He's going to have a real hard time, and then he'll get a break for a second, and then it's unlimited, no break. So you better enjoy it when we get there.
Oh God, just give me the last one for a while.
Yeah.
He's kind of enjoying a bit of a respite when we first meet him in
Yes.
Balloon.
Yes, I've got a great way to tie off the first 5 or 6 books. I'm leaning more towards 6 to really make it a thicker arc. But yeah, there's a nice knot tie with the whole bar sequence and everything that happens towards the end of the first arc, and then implies the greater things we're working towards, while also finishing it if that was to be the end of Jack. So we'll see. But yeah, the bar scene, people, it's definitely an exposition dump in the flavor of Forrest Gump, to be fair. But I think people get what I'm doing even more so with issue 3. I really do, because so far there's been disconnects with why I'm presenting things as they are, and I think as it becomes a more cohesive, solid piece, and as I continue to learn more, and our team learns more, and can just produce better and quicker work, I think people will get what I'm working at. I hope. That's the hope of any writer, though. So we'll see if I'm wrong in it or not.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely think you guys are improving with each issue. The first one was incredible, and the second one was even better. Almost everyone I've talked to says that the second issue that you improved on the first one in a lot of ways. So
yeah, that's what I've heard too. It was heavier on exposition with less. It's not as smooth, the transition to flashbacks and such. It's more instead of going from one scene to another, it's Jack talking about another scene, and then you're watching that other scene he's talking about. So there's a difference in execution that some people didn't enjoy as much as the first one, but pretty much all that's out of the way now. So we'll see. There's still going to be Jack in the bar talking about things, but
A lot of that was
it's a much more
proposal.
guided journey from in issue 3 and on. It's much more direct. You're following Jack on a journey, less you're listening to Jack at a bar talking about, giving you a history lesson or something.
Well, he's got to catch you up first,
That's my hope. That's my hope, and I think a lot of people enjoy it. I don't know if most people did. I would think so, but just because of how little I've heard feedback otherwise. But yeah, we'll see. Again, issue 3 solves a lot of this. Well, it doesn't solve, but it definitely it picks up. We definitely put a lot more energy. There's a lot more just a kinetic feel to the whole book now. Movement, less sitting and listening, which I wanted people to sit and listen in issue 2. That's a big part. In fact, there's a whole sequence when he's talking to the shaman about, just sit, breathe, and listen for a minute. Just take a moment to enjoy things. And so that's there, but it's definitely different with 3 and on, just because we're finally on the mission and less setup.
Interesting. Well, that's very exciting. I hope people will get to see that when issue 3 is completed and it reaches its funding. Now, we've talked a little bit about Jack Irons. What about? Can you tell us about his robotic horses there?
There's a lot there. I'm hoping to reveal. I think I reveal a little bit of it in issue 3, just a little bit, because he does get them back in issue 3. I can tell folks that it's a big part of, again, starting the mission.
Those are popular, man. I know a lot of people really connected with those. Even just
it's that imagery, that one page is just so well done. They're a very important part coming up. In fact, they're not going anywhere as far as I know for a long time after issue 3. But at issue 3's time, I wanted to convey Jack was so lost, so just wanting not to exist, that he was leaving everything behind. Everything was decaying and running away or whatever, so he didn't care. But by the end of issue 3, he has another purpose, something new to engage with. And so right away, everything clicks back again, and he's lucky enough that he's had friends who took care of his other friends. And so we do get to see the horses again.
Now, we don't want to get into spoilers here, but that brings up an interesting question. So, obviously tread lightly here. But you mentioned he gets a new purpose. Could that somehow be possibly involved with this young girl character that we've seen teased a bit?
Possibly. She's going to be both more and less than people think.
Interesting.
Because so far I've gotten the vibe that a lot of people think she's a very powerful plot device. And she is not yet, is the best way I could put it. She was more of an experience that got him back home, which then this new encounter in issue 3 gets his mind in a different place. Seeing an old friend makes that huge difference.
Interesting. Yeah, because when I saw that image, I didn't necessarily think of a plot device, but to me, that panel really shows Jack's humanity.
That was the main purpose of it. That was the entire purpose of it for issue 2, if I'm being honest. It was to show that he cares, and that even among all this horror, somebody else's problem actually still matters to him. And so that's what I wanted to convey with that. And so she's done her mission that far.
I could totally see that. Yeah.
She has other things that'll happen if we get through this arc.
Man, you always have plans upon plans here.
I do. I really enjoy living in this world. In my head anyway. I wouldn't actually enjoy it physically. I know, thank you. But even like on a fucking pleasure planet, I think the politics would be awful. But nonetheless, so yeah, it's pretty well thought out.
We got to do a whole episode on pleasure planets, man.
We would have to have a whole issue to be worth it. But if anybody's familiar with 40K, there's different worlds allocated for different purposes within the Imperium, and very much the same in Jack Irons' world as the Anu Confederation also has specific planets for specific uses. And some would be pleasure planets. Famine Inc. also has pleasure planets, but they're more the Hellraiser type of pleasure than the more conventional kinds.
Yeah, I can
So-
go in many directions, I guess.
Right?
Exactly.
Oh,
So so far that angle isn't of direct interest to me exploring it. I'm more into the psychological aspect of living in that
Oh my
kind of
God.
world that allows those things than exploring those things specifically. But the point of IronVerse comics is to build a world great enough, big enough that any story could be told, and one of them
Yeah.
could very well be a slave escaping from a pleasure planet, or
I would love,
something
I
like
would
that.
love to see at some point down the line a Jack Irons lore book. That would be so cool.
We're working on it, kind of. It needs to be cleaned up. We've got what's called the IronVerse Compendium, which people can get
wow.
access to if they don't mind spoilers through our Patreon, which has it's basically a wiki. It has all the information where we're going, what tools and power sets people have, where their limits are. It spoils some story arcs too, so again, tread lightly, folks, if you do want to check it out but still want to be surprised with what we're doing. But so that's being done, and then when it's finished, or finished enough, because again, this is an ever-breathing universe, if I can help it, it's always going to be changes, alterations, movement. But at some point, yeah, I'd love to do that. I think people would enjoy it. Be fun as an RPG source book too. Be easily pivoted towards. You just need to set up the rules of the universe again, and that's easy enough. And that's the whole point of the compendium, is just so as we bring in more creatives to attempt to work with us, we wanted to have a baseline guide specifically for new writers, because right now it's just me and Dollar Coins, but we've had others express interest. There's a particular interest in a story, in the story that is how humanity fell. There's a specific tale somebody wanted to tell within that, and how we sold and did the Faustian bargain that happened in issue 2. I'd love to see that happen, because it adds more depth and shows you can add some humanity to what was a very, very bad decision. And you can show what brought them there, and you can show that kind of stuff. So I'm always interested, but then again, then you still need rules so that the whole cohesiveness doesn't fall apart. Like Marvel Comics, it takes place in a more grounded reality than DC's comics, and so that was the rule set. Basically, is there's this groundedness to it. You have to kind of feels like you're on the streets of New York City. That was kind of their loose set of rules from what I'm seeing. It's changed very much and continues to alter, but you need to have some kind of baseline for your flavor, I guess, is it, or else it just is something else wearing the brand's name or the universe's name, and we want to avoid that very much. We want everything to be meaningful and to add to the overall thought of IronVerse comics, of the thinking, the contemplation. If it doesn't do that, then it's not IronVerse comics.
And you already have so many, amazing characters that are just waiting to have their chance to jump into the Iron.
Yeah, even in just the little minis. I really want to get those minis together and out, and then we'll see what people really enjoy. Because I know we've already kind of done a light test with that, and people are way more into Jack than Cactus Coyote, and it's two completely different audiences, which is great. But I want to be able to feel that out with quite a few other characters, and then we know where to pivot our effort until we have enough steam, or if we need to integrate one of these characters more as a side character until they carve out more of a personality, like we're doing with Tracker with issue 3. Or there's a lot of different ways to go about it. So though we have a grand plan and it's pretty well set, there is lots of room to pivot. And I think that's the only way we're going to survive and be able to tell folks these stories. So, yeah, there's a lot of time to go, and I've got to learn to be more patient. It's going to be a lot of time.
Well, speaking of some of these other characters that you have, we're introduced to a new one this time around called Tracker, the top predator, and he is a human, I believe.
Yes.
And what can you tell us about him?
Well, so
spoilers,
baseline of human in IronVerse comics, particularly post The Fall of Man and The Rise of the Horseman, is our definition of human and their definition, though they would consider us people too. Us looking at them genetically, biologically, physically, they mostly just look like us and have similar organs. At this point, humanity's been altered quite greatly. So he is still a person tracker, but he also had to go through these changes, just like Jack went through the changes. And basically any person you see in IronVerse comics that's old had went through the changes. In this case, I guess anybody over 70 would have personally went through the changes, whereas their kids and such, it would have been different because it's their kids. They didn't go through it. They were born as it. So there's differences. Much more hardy, can survive radiation, poisons, eat cardboard, anything organic, but much more resilient to healing and wounds, a little bit stronger. Bones are a little denser. There's a lot of differences, but besides that, issue 3 is Tracker's origin story in how it relates to how it's also part of Jack's origin story. So I don't want to give away too much. He's closer to Jack than a normal human, but he's not quite what Jack is either. And the reason why he's a top predator, explored in issue 3. What the rift was between Jack and him, explored in issue 3. How they met, explored in issue 3. A lot of Tracker stuff is in issue 3. So I'm very hesitant to talk too much.
You've given us a good amount here. Now, one thing I was curious about, and again, if it's not something you can talk about, just let me know. But his tattoos are really striking to me. Is there any story behind them, or do they just look really cool?
So in his pursuit of being the top predator, he's gone a lot of places and done a lot of things. One of the things he connected most with was the special forces. So he's got a big Marine tattoo, but he's been throughout a lot of different special forces for a lot of different things. And eventually I would say he was a mercenary is what he really became, because he became so sought after. He was more of an official assassin than anything. But eventually even assassinations got boring because he's killing the weak. So once the world became something new, became another wildland, a new frontier with new beasts to hunt and new things to test his strength against, he got his purpose back. Again, he shares a lot with Jack, as you guys will see in issue 3. But they took different paths. And so I'm stoked to show people that. I think people really like what Tracker is, and issue 3, people are going to have a lot of questions, which is exactly what I want, because through issue 4 through 6, hopefully maybe just 5, we'll get to explore those questions. So I'm hoping 3 really does, like, why did he do this to Jack, and why did this just happen? And that's the hope that'll drive through 4 through 6, is you kind of figure out why he did this, why he has any concern for Jack at this point, and what their initial contact in 3 is about. So we'll see there, but I'm excited. There's an 8-page mini by Vincent Rush and myself that's being produced as we speak. We'll see if that makes it into the back of Jack number 3 like I wanted, or if we're just holding on to it like we're holding on to the Cactus Coyote ash can, and we're holding on to the other scripts I have that are minis.
Stop holding them, man. We want them.
Yeah. Again, timing is everything.
True.
Timing is everything. If you go too wide, too quick, I don't know if you can get in trouble from it, but it's just not going to get the traction. We tried that with Cactus very quickly. You know, he has 400 pages of scripts ready that are fucking amazing. I love Cactus Coyote's story, if nothing else. I cannot wait to see it actually drawn and these ideas and such manifest, because his story and characterizations are so dang strong. But that didn't matter, because we started on a weak foot with a new character. So it's it's tough.
I know this is a Jack Iron stream, so I won't go on this for too much time here. But
Yeah.
I always say that you guys should really think about and putting it out there with his original art, because I think it could be a really good, a relatively inexpensive way for you guys to get some good IronVerse content out there on a regular basis.
That would be killer. Right now, everybody's kind of in I don't want to say panic mode, but they're in something akin to
Flux.
panic mode. Everybody's kind of vigilant and worried. So now's not the best time to ask for free art.
Definitely
but
not.
we do have many plans to continue the manga, which is available on top. Is 40 pages, free to read. See if it's up your alley. And we have plans to continue Cactus Coyote down the line with what we have. Our goal would be that the ash can sells people on the idea, so that they're more likely to back it, and they'll see a fully, because with the manga, it's loose. It's a very it's an amateur manga, so it's got all the rough edges. Whereas if we can put that IronVerse comic sheen and shine in front of people, they might take the character a little bit more seriously. Because again, too, the character, it's good design. The concept is a lot better than the design, in my opinion. But the why he looks like that and all of that is way more interesting than generic persona. But it's we have to get people to look into it. And so again, the manga's a great way to check. You'll get a little bit of the humor. You'll get a little bit more of the IronVerse Comics galaxy in about 2080, maybe a little bit past. It might be more 2090 something, I think. The chronology isn't 100% set in stone in IronVerse Comics, but as we continue to add, it'll be easier to, as we flesh out pieces of the chronology, it'll be easier to fit them together. So it's how it is, but yeah.
Is it safe to say that Cactus Coyote takes place after the current Jack Irons arc?
Yes, a good like I was saying, a good 10 to 20 years afterwards.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, Jack's already a galactic outlaw at that point.
Wow.
Captain of his own ship with a very unique crew. Going very One Piece with this, folks, too. I really want to emphasize how we're trying to fit this together, because once we get into the great cosmic ocean, people will see exactly what we were trying to get to with all this little stuff. But
I think it's a great analogy to look at it like One Piece. Like, we're here doing this first arc and we're on Earth, and yes, there are these great characters. You got Tracker, you got Golden Monk, but once Jack gets to space, that's when things really open up. That's like when you get to the next ocean over in One Piece, and things
exactly.
really...
Or once Luffy finally finishes his crew and gets them all together,
exactly. Yeah,
then they all have their unique missions that fit together, and they travel together to get those missions done. That's kind of what we're working for. You mentioned the Golden Monk, so this is about the characters, right? So there's Jack, as we spoke about, Cactus Coyote, which is a shape-shifting alien garbage disposal who makes a life smuggling, trying to just make ends meet in a very awful reality, and he's only about 8 years old, so he's figuring it out. And then there's the Golden Monk, which is it's a reverse Bruce Lee story. So Bruce Lee was sent over to the States because he caused a lot of trouble in his home country. This is the opposite. The guy was in the States, and he's sent over to his home country to be taught a little bit of restraint, and because he was a hardcore drug and disco fanatic, and so he gets to a point where his family's like, "You're just too much. You're going over, and you're going to go live over here." Anyway, he doesn't want to do that, but he gets over there. He gets loose and gets in a lot more trouble than he can handle. Almost gets killed, and gets saved by an ancient order of monks who found some kind of potential in him. Eventually, he is put on a pedestal. The potential is grown more and more and more, and eventually he gets an Iron Fist-like thing where you get to go do this, nobody else does. You earned the right, and so he gets to pray under the World Tree. He had no idea that it would take about 80 years of meditation, and so he wakes up about in his 90s. Everything's falling to crap. The World Tree has put all of its energy into him, making him very extremely powerful. But his mind is stuck in his younger body, or is stuck in the frame of mind of having a younger body. And his actual body and brain and stuff started degrading. So he's got dementia. And so it's him exploring and trying to rebuild nature. Basically, the World Tree speaks to him in the form of a little bonsai tree. That's kind of in his imagination, keeps him on track when the dementia gets too much. But it's basically him. It's basically a Goku-like monk going through with dementia, not really realizing the world that he's in or the new rules of it or anything, just kind of trying to exist and trying to bring nature back to Earth. And his story takes place more on the Russian, Chinese, Japan, that kind of the eastern side of the world, whereas Jack's stories take place very much on the western side. And so that dichotomy is what I'm trying to also eventually bridge, and then
Maybe
we'll
a
get to
little bit of
explore Eastern philosophy
meets
and
west,
Western
perhaps.
philosophy. What?
Yes, exactly. A little bit of east meets west.
Yeah, a little wabi sabi.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Hey
so
man, well
that's the.
you got artists from East. What is it that color colorist you got? What the comic did he work on? It's East of West
Oh,
or
East of West. Yeah, that's funny. No, that's very much a. I guess there's. So very much worth reading, folks. By the way, it's wonderful apocalyptic science fiction western. It's great. It's definitely something I'm going to have to try and live up to. But
nice.
Death's wife is Chinese, and we follow
Oh,
Death in East of West, and his
interesting.
story, and it's a hell of a thing. But yeah, there's a little bit of East meets West there. It's there was another apocalyptic event back in the Civil War or so that split the United States into a bunch of different, very racial, tribal factions, and yeah, it's a hell of a thing I'm learning from. I've gotten through 3 volumes of it, and then I lost my extra income, so I have not been able to get the other volumes. But they finished it, which is great. I'm always happy to hear when a story gets finished, and it was 45 issues, and I think I'm about
Oh
15
wow.
in. So yeah,
Pretty good length
it's very
too.
much, yeah. I mean, it's Jonathan Hickman too. People really like his work with X-Men and a lot of the other stuff he's been on. But yeah, you might have lost me there for a second. Computer went to sleep. Apologies.
No, you're all good. You're all good.
No, it was good. All right, cool. Because
Oh
yeah, I just
yeah,
noticed it. But yeah, so that's worth checking out, folks, and the amazing colorist for it, Frank Martin Jr., who's also coloring a lot of covers for Marvel right now, and he's the colorist on Wolverine with Adam Kubert right now, is doing a variant cover for our campaign, so it's worth checking out, folks, and it's only going to be for this campaign or the next one if we don't fund, but should be this one. So yeah, I'm excited. He found us and liked what we were doing, and then I found out he did this kind of work, and I was like, oh, that's why he likes what we're doing. Very cool. Instead of
yeah, I mean
taking it
that's
as
right.
yeah,
Well, sorry,
instead of
go ahead.
taking it as like you're aping what we did or anything, because I had no idea what East of
Mm.
West was. I had heard of it, but I had no
Oh
idea.
wow.
And it's very much it's a
Hmm.
western involving the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse
Oh
in
my
a
gosh.
apocalyptic situation. So
Oh,
it's
that's so funny.
it
The
was
parallels
very
are eerie.
yeah, and it's a science fiction. It's got the science fiction bit to it. So yeah, it was very interesting. It's a completely different vibe than what I would have gone. It's more of a Game of Thrones vibe. It's more political intrigue. It's more interpersonal relationships and conflicts that
Much more
end up.
dramatized, I suppose.
Yeah, and it just so it's not how I write, but it's a really good, really well written version of that. Again, I'm really excited to finish it. Um,
Well, that's
but
awesome, man. It's
yeah.
interesting to see that you came up with that kind of, you didn't really know anything about it, but now that you know, you can kind of maybe take some influences from it as well and bring that to Jack.
Oh yeah, there's some very cool stuff that happens in it. And though in this one, Death is the protagonist in East of West, and the other 3 are very much the
He's a,
antagonists.
oh
There's a lot
wow.
of antagonists. Basically, everybody's a damn antagonist. Again, it's like Game of Thrones. Everybody's a piece of
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
But Death at least has an understandable goal, even if he goes about it in some of the meanest, cruelest ways possible. And
Mhm.
again, that's not how I write, but it explores a lot of cool scenes, and it's got great art. Nick Dragotta does a great job, and again, Frank Martin, he's a color master. So check it out, folks. If you have an East to West, Image Comics just finished in 2019, I think they just finished their last issue, so still pretty fresh. Definitely check it out. But
Very
yeah,
nice, man.
in
Very
terms of
nice.
IronVerse, we're working at it. We're working at it. We're not at 45 issues yet.
Getting there, getting there.
Getting there, one at a time.
That's right. Now, the first issue, couple issues, we talked about it. Jack Irons is at a bar talking, and he's telling his story. it takes place in a town called New Deadwood. What can you tell us about the setting of New Deadwood?
It's not much a town so much as it's a reservation. It's a section of land cut out and defended. Its borders are defended. Its sovereignty is quote unquote defended from the. In this case, it's right in the heart of Famine Inc. territory. Um, there's a good story that again I hope to tell of how New Deadwood came to be. In issue 2, we showed how humanity fell. Well, shortly after that, after Prot is made and the galactic government gets wind of it, they show up and they set up a preserve for humanity. You gave the galaxy a way to feed our armies so we can fight the horsemen, so we're going to protect you till the end of time. Blah, blah, blah. And it's more of don't we look good when we're stealing this technology and then keeping our foot on the throat of this species that could very well get out of hand very quickly? So I want to explore that very much at some point. But New Deadwood, yeah, it's just a reservation. Jack calls it a zoo. This galactic government could destroy the planet if they wanted to stop the horsemen from getting to space and align with themselves. That's one of the biggest things that happen, and it usually causes a lot of huge turmoil for the galactic government once a new planet is added to the menagerie of a horseman. So they would have probably blown up the planet if they couldn't have used it for political favor and to show that we are the good guys. And so that's kind of what it is. It's a prison for humanity. That's freer than anything else on Earth, but is still very much not free.
What country is it specified? What country it's in?
It's so I've done a map before and just done the circles where territories are and stuff, but it's what used to be the territory in New Mexico, part of Texas, part of Colorado, and part of Utah. It's the Four Corners territory with a little bit more land. So it's a huge tract of land. It's massive. There's a lot of people, a lot of different settlements, a lot of different things that are in New Deadwood.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? I was interested.
It's a territory. It's a yeah. It's not a town. There are cities. There are townships within New Deadwood, but New Deadwood is just the reservation. It's literally the fence, the wall that keeps the horsemen out. That's what New Deadwood is. Everything inside is other things, but yeah, it's basically the Southwest. If you had to just generalize it, it's the American Southwest. If it had a wall around it, because the manifestation of corporate greed, hate, and toil is outside those walls.
Wow, that's really interesting. It actually puts in perspective. I hadn't really quite contextualized until you kind of put it like that.
It hasn't been shown in the books yet either, and again, it kind of they call it just New Deadwood because it's the new place for outlaws. Everybody in this society feels like an outlaw because everything's trying to control them in some way, and they don't do that. And so they don't do that way, so it makes them an outlaw. But so everybody's in Deadwood, but it was supposed to be kind of a spiritual thing too. I doubt the Anu Confederation named it New Deadwood. I'm assuming the people that they contacted with and worked out the alliance and the built the walls and all of that. They came together and figured out what kind of message they wanted to send the horsemen with this action and calling it New Deadwood. But it's a huge territory. It's a huge territory. All of issue 1 and 2 takes place in New Deadwood. Issue 2 at the end takes place in the outskirts, the burnt forest of New Deadwood, which is outside the walls, but not. I guess you'd call it the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. It's where things from either side should not be crossing. Or there's legal trouble. And of course, Famine's way willing to work in bureaucracy if it'll get his way. He doesn't mind at all. So he'll talk to this Galactic Alliance. He'll probably sell them and sell to them, and maybe even owns a few slave planets or whatever. But on Earth, it's a different story than in the Galaxy Famine. It's just there's so much there. I really am looking forward to expressing it to our readers.
No, that's awesome, man. I just love the world you built, and it kind of brings up a question for me because you said that Deadwood is really the whole reservation. Where is Cody's saloon? Is it what kind of a township or a territory? What kind of a where is that located specifically within Deadwood?
It looks like it's Maxie's always drawn it off of it's like a lone building off a highway. So I just take it as a lone building off a highway. It'd be
It's
kind
like
of
a truck
funny if it
stop.
was a franchise. I thought about that too, where there's a bunch of them and it's a franchise deal.
Oh,
I
you know what
thought
you could
that
do
that
there,
could be
man?
pretty funny.
Oh my God, you
There's
know what you could do? Oh my God, sorry to interrupt, but you could
no.
totally take the bar. You could totally do it like a Pokemon with the with the nurses
Oh,
and have all the bartenders be like brothers or
the
something.
same lady, or
Yeah.
always have the same drunk trucker on the chair. I'm
Right,
thinking of
right,
something
yeah.
like that. I am. There's a few different ways to go about it,
Uh,
but that's part of it too.
that's
Is
great, man.
there's a morbid humor at the heart of Jack.
Right.
It's that dark
Yes.
black humor at the heart of Jack that allows you to ride through the blackness with a laugh, and so that's not going anywhere. Particularly in the bar scenes, that's the big thing in issue 2. There's a poker fight. There's a fight over poker and they don't even know what game they're playing and somebody gets their head blown off, but it's cool because that guy's head grows back, but he still has to mop up his own head. That's a whole subplot in issue 2.
That's
It's a whole
funny.
subplot. So there's something kind of like that in issue 3 also, which I'm stoked. We actually got the first page of that subplot in on page 6, I guess it was, inks. So that was cool to see. And yeah, no, I'm excited because that's kind of where it is that it also helps show that Jack is unfazed by the craziness around him. This is just another day. And that's why he keeps talking in issue 2. It doesn't matter that there's a gunshot going off in the back, somebody's head just blew off. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect him what he's doing. What's he gonna get shot? Big deal. So that's kind of part of the communication too of the character. Are those bar scenes. It's kind of really important to the core of him. I probably could have done it better. I'm sure there's always a way to do things better, but I'm happy with what we did, and I think it does a good job of trying to communicate what I want communicated. And yeah, issue 3, there's another good little fight in the background. I'm excited to show people. It's pretty fun.
No, that's awesome, man.
But yeah, the setting, like you're talking about, the setting is like a major character in IronVerse. It's as important as Jack. It's as important as the Horseman. Getting the flavor right and getting the scenery right, getting the aliens in the background, and pretty much 90% of that is on my wonderful artist Maximiliano Dallo, who has been an incredible gift to this project. So talking to me about it, but a lot of the actual visual flavor, the grittiness, the weight, the comedy, a lot of that comes straight from him, and it wouldn't even be close to the same without him.
No, that's great, man. And I think I love that aspect of your comic, the dark humor element. It's not 100% total seriousness, but it can kind of balance out the darkness a little bit.
We try to go Judge Dredd about it, I would say, where he is the most serious motherfucker on the planet, Dredd. Most serious fucker, and so much comedy comes from that. So much comedy. There's a scene where it was I guess it's a page I saw relatively recently where Dredd's just kind of standing there, and there's another judge who has fallen madly in love with him and thinks that he loves her too. So she's giving this whole speech to him, and then kind of like grabbing around him, and then eventually she kisses him, and he's like, unlawful contact of an officer, 4 years. Shit like that, and he's just got the same face in all like 4 of the panels, just standing there letting her do whatever she's doing. Just deadpan. That kind of stuff is great, and that's the kind of humor we're hitting. The more heavy metal 2080 version of humor, whereas Image goes a little bit more gory and a little bit more cartoony. We're gonna have that, but it's grounded, and it's certainly not wacky. If you want wacky, we got Cactus Coyote. Cactus Coyote's wacky. We got Wag. He's a Looney Tune, but Jack is more of laugh at your buddy getting their head blown off, because otherwise your heart's gonna break and you're gonna be useless. that kind of mode. So yeah, we'll see. That will grow and change as we move forward. In fact, I've written other shorts with Jack where he's a little different, a little looser. Took the stick out of his ass a couple inches, but
that's tough.
It's going to be a fun journey, and I'm looking forward to it. The longer it takes, in fact, it's going to take forever either way. But more content comes quicker with more support.
Oh, definitely. Now, we're getting close to the end of our time here today, but we have still a bit of time. We can chat some more about the settings and the characters.
Cool.
We talked a lot about the characters today. We mentioned some really interesting characters you've got coming up, and of course, we mentioned New Deadwood. But something that I haven't heard talked much about in the past is the other settings of the IronVerse. That is, what's outside of New Deadwood? What's the rest of the world like?
Well, end of issue 3, we ride into what's outside of New Deadwood. You get to see what corporate hell looks like to Famine. You're riding into hell. There's no other way to define it. It's somebody's very specific version of hell, but it's hell. Basically, the entirety of Earth is fractured into 3-4 different hells. Technically 3 or technically 1, I guess, because death is everywhere. But the 3 brothers, they split the country. As part of the whole thing with the Anu Confederation is they hit a stalemate. They can't beat each other, which is usually what happens if more than one manifests. One gets the upper hand on the other and then escapes to space. That did not happen on Earth. 3 of them manifested together and were quickly put under control by the Anu Confederation and not allowed to grow. So they still fight with each other. Plague down in Antarctica and a good chunk of Africa. He just has a biolab, the most horrific biolab you could ever imagine. And so he's pumping out kaiju, diseases, whatever he feels like at that time in his pursuit of perfect life. War, which is basically all of Eurasia and a good chunk of Africa, that's the other one. He's just fighting. That's all he needs. He would like to get into space to the bigger fight, but he's got his own kingdom and fight here, so he's happy enough. And Famine, he ain't happy. He wants to always grow and get more slaves and toil and horror, but he's come to terms the best he can with his brothers, so he's less likely to fight them, but they still do. The main thing that separates them are the oceans. The Anu Confederation doesn't allow boats or travel along the oceans, so they don't fight very often, the brothers, anymore. That's another one. So they've kind of become complacent in the 50 or so years since the fall, and they did all their work. So basically, everywhere outside of New Deadwood on Earth is hell. You head into space, you have entire hell worlds dedicated to one specific whatever evil, and you have a few places like Spinaroonie Town in Cactus Coyote where outlaws and the criminal enterprises that can somehow find a way to work among the Four Horsemen and the government. They make small places, pockets where quote unquote freedom can be bought or traded. Really anything you can think of is probably out there in some form in the IronVerse. We're very much Star Trek in that, you could land on a Nazi planet. But it's not the most likely. You can land on a mob world, but it's not the most likely. But they have those vibes. In fact, Spinaroonie Town is very much a mob town. It's got all the feels and all the bits. It's basically Las Vegas in space during the galactic apocalypse. But there's a lot of places I'm looking to define. We're mainly exploring New Deadwood and Famine Inc. territory in Jack Irons this first arc. You're going to see a little bit outside of it, particularly in the mini. You get to see so Plague releases kaiju wherever. So they nest wherever, and if it's too big of a problem for war to, go ahead and get rid of it, or for famine to go and get rid of it, then you do have a little isolated pocket of plague. And in the Tracker Mini, we get to see one of those kaiju and see it get hunted. Jack had heard of this thing getting slain because it had been a very long time since something like that had gotten killed. So there's all kinds of different places. It's basically Mad Max with some what I call plague zombies, which are closer to the zombies in, oh god, what's that movie called? Oh, that's gonna bug me. Oh man, it's based on Omega Man with Charlton Heston, which was based on a book. I Am Legend. It's more like the I Am Legend zombies, where they have some form of intelligence. So there's pockets of that in civilization, the ones that haven't been enslaved and turned into cyborgs to work on the pyramid scheme. There's a lot of that, but yeah, it's, you would think it's Fallout with like more of a cowboy hat on.
Yeah, well, it's like that. It's like that times 10, because like I just love the idea of Jack Irons going up against a kaiju.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff with that. We're working towards something like that in Arc 1. Yeah, like I said, you get to see that as the top predator. We kind of have to show you why, but
so it's actually
you'll see why the top predator wants anything to do with Jack. That's the big question I want people to be asking at the end of issue 3 is why? Why did any of that happen? And throughout 4 through 6, or 5, 4 through 5, 4 through 6, whatever, we'll find that out. And it might have something to do with a big problem.
Now, we've talked a lot about the setting and the people, but what is the ecosystem like in the world of the IronVerse?
Pretty much all life is dead. I mean, there's trees, it looks like, from what Maxie's doing, which I'm okay with. I would just, again, we would recognize it in terms of visual, but once you got down to the cellular or biological level, very different, much more hardy, much stronger, much more adaptive to the environment. That's plague wanted perfect life, and the Y2K virus in Jack Irons' time, it helped him move closer by killing half of everything. Very Thanos snappy, but a lot less pleasant. It didn't just disappear into dust. It's, the Black Plague within a minute. No, thank you.
We saw that in issue 2, didn't we?
Yes, exactly. And so anything that lived with that came back different. And so you do get birds, you get crows and stuff like that, but they'd probably be closer to the zombie ravens and stuff of Resident Evil than they are to our crows and ravens. You get lizards, you get little things. Most of it, again, is mutated or hardier, but it might look very similar to what we'd recognize. And then some things don't look similar at all, and they're just horrible Cronenberg monstrosities. That exists too, but it's less common. Life is very uncommon on Earth. Particularly free life is very uncommon. You'll have famine out looking for resistance pockets and then enslaving them and turning them into eternal servants. You'll have war doing the same, looking for anybody able-bodied, and then he'll stuff them full of drugs and make them crazy as shit, mind control them, and then send them out to go fight maybe another one of his own armies just because he's bored. There's really not much on Earth that's around. I mean, it's zombies, kaiju, some people, and then horseman monstrosities, one form or another. Animals are very rare. Very rare. You'll catch, like in issue 1 and issue 2, you'll catch cybernetic animals, but that is pretty much all Jack's work. It was his memorials to life that he missed. So like issue 1 opens up with a robotic jackrabbit, and that's Jack made that jackrabbit. The horse is the same thing. If there's cybernetic life, he was one of the few to actually be able to create an actual consciousness and put it into a mechanical body. So they're eternal memorials to whatever they look like, but they're very uncommon too.
And then, that doesn't mean that the life is it's not real life. Well, It's
Yeah.
not the organic life that we once knew.
No, not at all. You could do the whole data argument, but they're not. Some of them are that smart. The 2 horses are that smart. They're human intelligence at the least. They're just filtered through the framework of an animal,
I see, yeah.
framework of a horse. That's how he made sure it didn't go Skynet on top of everything else that was happening. He didn't make a conscious AI that seeked only destruction. They already had 4 other things doing that, but. But yeah, the other ones are much simpler consciousnesses, but they have a role to play, hopefully, too, as we continue the story. But really, it's mutated animal life, and very few of it mutated plant life, and not too much of it. Cybernetic slaves, biological mind control, big brutal mutant slaves, and yeah, it's not a pleasant place.
Oh yeah, I know. Jack Irons, he's lucky to be where he's at, and it seems like in the universe, in the grand scheme of things,
Yes, absolutely. In fact, all of human life, even though how bad it is. And in issue 3, you get to see what the Anu Confederation's like on a personal level with people, in particular with our sheriff, Kitty McIntyre. You get to see how she tries to do good even through all their BS, and it's interesting. I think it's going to be a fun communicating where humanity draws the line to these what she called angels with the heavy hands. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, and of course aliens too. But you're much less likely to find aliens on Earth unless they're refugees. It takes a certain kind of dedication to go through the Anu blockade and not get destroyed, or the right amount of money, or the right the right influence, or the right timing, or the right character, like a Cactus Coyote. He's a coyote. He smuggles people in and out. But it's very uncommon. But aliens do go to Earth because it is a holy place to at least one species, and they're looking for their messiah there. And so that's a whole another bit I want to get to too. There's a lot there, but you're less likely to find aliens out in famine territory, simply because most everything gets blown to hell if it's not let in. And the Anu Confederation, as corrupt as they are, they're not stupid, so they don't allow anything to communicate with the horsemen in and out if they can help it. So real bad bounty hunters or whatever from space, famine couldn't get one in unless that one specifically could pay off an Anu Confederation officer to let his ship and crew get through the blockade. Then you have to pay somebody else off to make sure they could land, and all of this has to be off the sites. I mean, it's a pain in the ass. It's doable, but it's not a super common sight to see an alien outside of New Deadwood that's not a refugee.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, man. Now, Neostar Productions in the chat says, "Okay, I'm back. What's this about mind control mutants?"
Well, and it's the rigorous kind of mind control. It's not like you're setting somebody in front of a TV screen and then bombarding them with imagery or something. It's more chemically induced, and then cult behavior would be the mind control. So it's still freedom, but it's freedom within a box, and a very strictly controlled box. And so that would be the mind control. Or pump you full of drugs, and then probably put something in front of you to see if you'd kill it, whatever it is. It could be something really cute, a little cute puppy, or something really strong to see if his drugs are working. Doesn't matter. And the mind control is interesting. Famine would be more likely to just stick a chip in your brain, and then that's your brain now.
How nice of them.
Yeah. Cleaner, quicker, less fighting. But then again, war wants fighting.
Now, that's actually a good question. I'd like to actually take the time to talk a little bit about Famine Inc. and the Horsemen, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Excuse me. What is Famine Inc. and what are they all about?
Okay, so Famine Inc. is so there's Famine, who would be the persona, the manifestation, the actual physical thinking, breathing being that was manifested from humanity's own leanings towards industrial cruelty and greed. So as soon as he showed up, he was working harder to proliferate that, to make it reality. That's what the horsemen do. They see reality and it's not them, and they find that sickening. So they do their damnedest to make sure that reality is them. There can be no other. There is only Famine Inc., or there is only war. There's only death. There's only plague. That's how they think. And so he, as soon as he manifested, which that's another great, there's so many cool tales that could be told. Famine's origin when he gets birthed, and then how he comes to terms with this world and then slowly corrupts it and eats it from the inside.
Man.
We get a glimpse
Yeah.
of it in issue 2. We see that he got to a point where humanity actually was reaching a tipping point where it could have destroyed itself, and therefore it would have destroyed him. He only exists because we do. Same with war, same with that. Each of these manifestations, they're tied to the species that manifested them. They get less tied to it as they get more powerful, and eventually they're powerful enough to exist without it. But that's not the case for our horsemen, even in Jack's furthest time that we've seen so far. They're still linked to people. They still need people around. And his hope was, since he couldn't control people enough for them not to destroy themselves, if he killed, very Thanos style, if he helped his brother kill half of all life, it would be more manageable. It was just a practicality thing in his mind. So he helped his brother, and his brother was happy to have the corporate assistance and the ability to, and the gift of gab that Famine has to get humanity to go along with it without fighting. And that's what happened. And then he goes and installs his main bits. Humanity had reached like cybernetic capabilities in his world, thanks to Famine pushing industry so hard and without care or humor. We, about the 1950s, which is kind of, again, very Fallout-y, we had strong cybernetics. You replace limbs, you could put a chip in your brain that would help you calculate faster, all that. So and that was all done under his orders, and eventually he started sticking them in people and controlling people, and now we have Famine Inc. as we know it, which is he wants, like the other three, to make all of reality him, and he calls this the pyramid scheme. And basically he just gets people to do menial tasks, painful menial tasks if possible, forever, as long as possible, to perpetuate his own strength. It's like burning more fuel, putting more coal on the fire each time he puts somebody under his whims. And so that's what Famine Inc. is across the galaxy. And so in the galactic sense, there are entire sectors of space dedicated to this pyramid scheme, which is, again, just suffering for suffering's task. Sometimes it's a literal pyramid too. Sometimes they grab. Sometimes it's just moving a brick back and forth for eternity, and you're putting it on the stack, and then later, and that takes you all day to get it up to the top of the stack. And then as soon as you put it there, you got to walk it down, and then you got to bring it back up, put it back on the stack. You got thousands of beings doing that under this control, smiling the whole time, being told to have a wonderful day. It's
sounds like Sisyphus, the legend of
yes. I'm pretty sure pushing the stone up all day, exactly. So that's the idea, and that's what Famine Inc. is. So you take what's on Earth, which would be smaller bits of slaveries and smaller. It's still massive on any logical scale, but you take it to the galactic realm, and he does have, he builds ships, he builds armies, he builds weapons. He's the ultimate arms dealer. He'll sell to anyone for any reason. And of course, this heel is a bunch of separate entities. Sometimes they do merge, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have very different ideas. Two different famines might have completely different ideas how to get a single goal done, but the goal will be the same. That kind of thing. So it's a big corporate, it's a shambling corporate entity of cruelty and pain that seeks only to perpetuate itself. That's what Famine Inc. is.
Well, that's really interesting. And I'm wondering so much today because I for some reason I had always assumed that Famine Inc. was part of the Horsemen as a whole, but it's actually just one horseman.
It's just one horseman, yes, just one horseman. All of the horsemen are just one horseman. They all seek one thing that is anathema to everybody else because they want to be the only. You can't have war and famine as the exact existence of everything. You can only have one. in their belief system anyway. In fact, usually that's the thing with the brothers too, is they're family because they all lead and connect to each other one way or another, with death being the big brother, being the older brother that they all eventually lead to, whether or not they want to admit it. Um, and so it's a fun exploration with those guys. War and famine are eternal enemies. Plague is less violent, but if he wants something, he will get it. It's very hard. He's of course the smartest brother. He's got the greatest access and knowledge of biology and life in the universe, and he uses that to perpetuate himself and what he believes is perfect life, which can sometimes include euthanasia, killing a bunch of things he don't like. It can sometimes mean altering things until he gets it right, and sometimes leaving horrible, horrific, shambling horrors with no care. He's uncompromising, cold science without remorse and with only a single purpose. And war, very similar. He just wants to fight. The bigger the fight, the better. The more decisive the fight, the better. And the more even the fight, the better, which is one of the differences. Is he doesn't really want to, unless it's something he needs, very tactical. If it's something he needs and he can get it quickly, he'll probably do that, unless there's a chance that he could better his opponent by going at it a different way. He's got that Goku mentality a little bit, where as long as it's a better fight, I'm okay with this guy because I only care about it on that level. And so that's his whole army acts like that. So, I mean, if war could focus on famine, he'd probably win. If war could focus on the Anu Confederation, he'd probably win. He doesn't care to focus because all of it's the good fight. And so that kind of keeps him a little bit more balanced. But yeah, it's they're the four pillars of IronVerse comics, and it's a balancing act that keeps them relevant. And we have a fifth pillar, which is the Anu Confederation. We have the sixth pillar, which is our heroes. And the hope is we can fit those all together into a nice narrative that can be ongoing and explore a lot of different facets of existence and our very complicated moral life and our very complicated storytelling life. There's a lot of different ways to go about things, communication, and yeah, that's. I mean, the Horsemen are probably the most important characters in the entirety of IronVerse comics at the moment. Might change, but not much.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's really incredible learning more about the specifics of their kind of their mentality and how they relate to one another.
I tried very hard to put a small, brief glimpse of that in issue 2 by the big double-page spread of them kind of explains what they are. I don't know, and I think I even said manifest.
I love that 2-page spread, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It was so Max. He did such a great job. The only thing is, again, if you set it up like that, that circle's in the middle of a printed comic, and it's not bad, but it's noticeable. It's not the same as looking at it as one piece.
2-page spreads are always tough to nail quite right.
Yeah, the composition's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he did a great job.
Nailed a pretty good job. Yeah, I really think he did a great job as well. And he explains their personalities quite well. You get a brief glimpse of who into their psyches a bit there.
Yeah, and that's the goal, is because it's those personalities at the core is what drives the whole world, that whole system. The Anu Confederation, they have a personality too, and it's corrupt government. So that's what's going to be explored there. And people are the subject, the things that have to deal with this, and that's what we're exploring. Most of them are very unique people that we're going to be dealing with, but there's a few very base level, normal people levels that we're going to be dealing with too, that hopefully will resonate with people as much as they do with others as much as they do with me. But we will see as we continue this interesting journey.
Now, I had another question while we're still on the topic of the Horsemen, which is we clarified today, and as I said, I was kind of getting to find out that myself. So Famine has his Famine Inc. But what kind of factions do the others have? You mentioned that War has an army. What kind of, who are the underlings of the other 3 horsemen?
Well, War, it's in the compendium. Most don't need minions, but they have minions. So there's different different levels. So you have Famine, and then you have his corporation, and you have the servants under him, like his secretary or a few others that help run things as a corporation and enact his will. War has lieutenants, he has generals, he has things that maybe he gets advice from, but mostly are just tools for his whims. Plague, not so much. He creates monsters. That's what he does. He doesn't really think intelligence should serve anyone but him, so he doesn't tend to put high intelligence into his creations. Very rare. Most of the time it's some kind of animal monstrosity or a bacteria, something very simple, something that's simple and strong, but usually quite horrific. So he has an army of monsters, I guess is what, but even then, Plague is not, he only conflicts with people when he has to. With entities or anything. So he doesn't have like an organized army or representation or something. If Plague's coming to your world, you won't see it coming. He'll destroy the shit out of what he needs and get it. It's very simple.
Okay.
War, he'll smash you. He'll tell you about it. He'll hope that you're good enough to be worth his time. Famine will buy you, sell you, enslave you, however he can to gain control of what you are and make it him. Death just waits. He doesn't have minions. He doesn't have. There might only be one death too. We haven't really explored that compared to all the other horsemen, which have different manifestations on different planets. There might just be death. And I'm excited to move towards that. That's part of Jack's biggest arc. The thing that actually could finish IronVerse comics as a whole is between Jack and death, and that's the whole idea of the immortal versus the cessation of all things.
Wow.
So
That's pretty amazing, man.
again, they're all the
that.
pillars are what holds this up. So they have to be deep, rich, and very clear on their motivations and their intentions and how they would enact them. And
that's how we're trying.
We try to
that's
put
what
a
we're trying
balance.
to do here. You know, we're trying to get those pillars laid down so that the foundation is laid and we can go forward strong with IronVerse comics.
Yep. The biggest one we're working hard on is going to be Famine. That's the first one. These heroes are helping to lay that a little bit. Issue 1, you got to see one of his Borgs that actually got into New Deadwood and was sanctioned as okay, but actually is not, and tries to kill Jack and gets what he was asking for. Issue 2, we tell you about the overall and why the Earth's like this, and why there's a balance, a stalemate, the best we could, which is primarily Prot. That's the only reason humanity wasn't swallowed by its own BS.
I just wanted to say real quick.
Yeah.
Hold that thought real quick. I just want to. If I put Neil Starr's thing up here, he says, "Just lay back and let it happen, and remember to breathe." That's a good way to think about the IronVerse in a lot of ways, honestly.
Yeah, it is. It's going to take a while before raging against the machine actually is helpful. We're getting there, though. We're getting there. Tracker's part of the match, I think, is what it is. It's not lit yet. We got the pile of wood set up, but it ain't lit yet. I'm hoping issue 3 lights it.
That's great, man. Yeah, I'm hoping so as well myself there for that one. But yeah, no, that's awesome, man. But sorry, were you still finishing up with that last one there? That last.
It was just something about Prot saving humanity and being another one of the pillars or whatever. But yeah, not a biggie, not a biggie.
Speaking of Prot, we definitely need to get some Proto beer up in here. Definitely, and Jack it seems like he really enjoys that stuff, man.
Well, when it's all you got, yeah. I mean, everything's Prot in the future.
Oh, really? What is Prot?
Well, I wouldn't say everything. Everything on Earth is, because they're blockaded, so nothing goes in or out. Technology, food, nothing. Sometimes soldiers from the Anu Confederation if they need to beat a head or two, but it's very rare. And again, there's one human too, well, a couple of humans that have gotten into the Anu Confederation, but we haven't explored them yet either. But I have written the short with her in it, and it's a fun short. It's basically all you got as a person, and you don't want to know what the Prot came from. That would be the number one thing you don't want to know. It can come from sewage. It can come from corpses. It can come from radioactive
just about
plants.
anything.
It can come anything
Oh.
organic, vomit, anything organic that they can put into this can then be reconstituted, kind of like a replicator in Star Trek, into something edible. Now we're not turning light into that. We're not doing the Star Trek light into matter trick. That's crazy. No. We're turning matter into better matter. We're performing alchemy, not
Arguably better
magic.
matter.
Okay.
Arguably better. I'm not sure Jack would necessarily agree with that, but.
Yeah, but yeah, that's so. I mean, again, it's what you got, and alcohol is alcohol. I guess is probably what he'd say.
That's funny. So he can still get drunk, right?
Kind of. I think it's more of a mental trick he does to himself. It's more of a. It's like when a smoker goes to light a cigarette they don't have, because they just quit.
More of an old habit.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Because it doesn't
Let's
really
sit down and talk and
Yeah. No, since the fall of man, when everybody got the sickness, which fun tales nowadays, but that changed everybody, and so part of Jack's bit is his metabolism and everything changed. So as long as he believes he can get drunk, he's getting drunk, but he ain't physically, no. He's very much the Captain America kind of metabolism.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, is there, as I was saying, we're getting close to the end of our time here, but is there anything you want to tell people out there about the characters, the settings that makes Jack Irons unique and such a compelling setting to read about?
I don't think anybody's trying to tackle the totality of human experience in the same way through a cowboy hat. I don't know if that's the best thing, but it is definitely unique. And we have the passion behind it. We have the talent behind it, surprises me. And we have the fan base so far behind it as well, which has been just incredible. Sure. There's a lot of different perspectives you can look at things from. If you're looking from the end and looking down, we are still at the bottom of the hill. But if you're at the bottom of the hill, we're quite a bit up compared to many others. So best thing you can do is check out our free reads if you haven't already, both Cactus Coyote and Jack Irons Steel Cowboy on Tapastic, just TAPAS, and then Jack Irons Steel Cowboy or Cactus Coyote. You'll find it right away in Google. And that's the best way to dive in, see if how we're going about it is your thing, because if you've listened to this so far, you know a lot of the what we're going about, but it's the how that's going to make the biggest difference. So that's a great way. Also, issue 1 and issue 2 in color, digital, are available on the Wicked website right now for download. So if you want them in color and to support indie artists during a very difficult time to be an indie artist, that's a great way to help and get some good reads and see if this is worth supporting on a larger scale for you. And issue number 3 is on Indiegogo right now for another 19 days, so a little under 3 weeks. It's a hell of an underdog story if we can get it funded, but that's the kind of story I'm doing, so it works just fine for me. Check it out. We got pages up there already. Got 4 pages of issue 3 on there. 2 of them inked, 2 of them colored. I've got 6 pages in overall from issue number 3. We're plodding along, taking it day by day and effort by effort, and hoping folks will want to join us on that journey and help us along, because we got a lot to say. Obviously, at least I do.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome, and like you said, it's an underdog story, but I think that's what we're all looking for right now. We can all use a good underdog story right about now, I think.
Absolutely.
It's definitely something that I'm hoping to see get funded and to kind of get to completion there.
Well, I mean, we already got to like 5K, and it took my entire campaign last time to get to the 2,500 I was asking for, and then everything else came afterwards after we had funded that 2,500. So It's just different. And honestly, we've gotten an incredible amount of support. So, I mean, even if this time was not to land, then I'm sure the next time when timing is chosen, hopefully a little bit better, I think it's a sure thing. So it's just gonna take tenacity, as I wrote in issue 1. Get you through anything.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, and if anything, Jack Irons is the perfect person to show and teach us about tenacity.
That's my
You
hope.
know.
That's my hope, because I'm gonna put him through the ringer.
Neostar Production says, "Ride or die, Steel Cowboy."
Yeah, he gets it.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you again for joining us today to talk a little bit more about the character and the settings of, you have a lot of amazing characters, all amazing settings here in Jack Irons, and I just can't wait for people to see it. So I really hope that this issue gets funded, if not now, then down in the future. So
Yeah,
I wish them
no,
much luck with it.
this ain't going anywhere as long as I continue to be able to work with the incredible talents I'm able to work with now, and as long as I have amazing support like you guys handling all of this. I mean, again, last campaign and its current success and the reception of the books very much hinged on your guys' participation and belief, and it's made a huge difference to myself. So again, thank you so very much for everything, guys.
Oh, you're very welcome, man. And it's only because that we believe in you that we put all that effort into it. So
Yeah.
it really reflects on your own work. You should really be
I
proud
sure
of
hope
yourself.
so. And again, I hope to continue to earn that and more if I can, so we can get grander and grander things done.
Oh, definitely, man. I'm looking forward to the bright future ahead for you. Well, thank you again, man. And if anyone hasn't backed it, please go check out the link below. And real quickly, can you tell us where people can follow you online, just in case they aren't already following you?
Best place is at cowboy_steel on Twitter. Though recently, particularly with everybody staying home and everybody kind of scared and worried, it's not the best place to be spending your time if you want mental health currently. But I am always happy to answer DMs, answer questions about my work, or if you're a fellow comic creator and you are having some trouble in one aspect or another. If I don't know how to help, I've been blessed enough that I bet I know somebody who does. So please feel free to get a hold of me, ask me questions, talk about your work, talk about my work, and just help support comics right now, where it's a slugfest, just all over, and it's an unnecessary one. So I'm happy to not participate and to go the other way.
No, I definitely can get that, man. And we actually have one more bonus question here at the end, which
Ooh.
is on a complete. Neostar says, on a completely unrelated note, how do you feel about Jack Irons taking on a Chaos Demon?
Oh, I was asked something in particular. Depends on the Chaos Demon. If it's a Slaaneshian demon, he has very little of that left, but it's a very high, like a Demon Prince that can actually claw into your mind. Depends how strong that Demon Prince is to handle that much experience and horror. Um, Very tough. Slaanesh would have a hardest time. Korn, trying to get him angry, that probably wouldn't be too hard. Uh, and I don't know. I think Papa Nurgle would have a trouble too because he can't get Jack sick. So I don't know. I don't know. I would say it
It's a tough
depends on the
one.
demon and the context, because he is, for all intents and purposes, a normal man. A little bit stronger, a little bit healthier, definitely smarter. Um, but all intents and purposes, he wouldn't have much. If it's playing by the rules of 40k, he's very close to the Emperor of Mankind in Origin. So, and the Emperor of Mankind is theorized to maybe become a fifth Chaos demon in terms of a fifth Chaos god, the god of order. So I really don't know, folks. I would say it
That's
depends on the
funny.
demon and the bit. If it's actually one of the gods, like Sneech or something, Sneech would probably really hate Jack. He can't change him. So I do not know. That'd be
Neo
fun to
stars. I'll have to
explore.
DM. Neo stars. I'll have to DM you the details later. Sounds like there'll be some ongoing conversations on that front.
Yeah, there's so many. There's so many.
Oh, that's funny, man.
And I'm a
That's
big
awesome.
40k geek, so it's hard for me to get
Oh,
off that once
perfect.
you get me on there. So
Oh man, that's great. Yeah. Well, thank you, Newstar, for joining us with all your great questions, and thank you
yes,
for everyone else in the chat as well. And if you're watching on the replay, we thank you for watching as well. And please go check out the link, all the links that we sent you. I know you guys are gonna like what you see on Tapas as well as on Indiegogo. He's got a lot of great tiers, a lot of great perks. So please go check it out.
Yeah, and
we'll
if you folks are interested in the secret perk and can't find it, just again, Twitter, cowboy_steel, just ask me and I'll shoot you that secret link as long as there are it's available, as long as the perk is available. So
right,
let me
man.
know if you
Secret
can't
menu.
find it. Yeah, if you want to save a couple bucks and get that trading card.
Hey man, that trading card is really, I mean, it sounds so cool.
It's
I
going to
love
be
that.
pretty damn cool. There's a lot of possibilities for the pieces, but I've got a pretty clear vision in my mind depending on how a couple of the things shake out in the coming weeks and maybe months, but definitely coming weeks.
That's excellent, man. Well, thank you again for joining us today. It was really exciting to hear more about the world. I learned so much today, even myself as a publisher. So I loved it, and it was really informative for me.
Well, good. I appreciate that. I know it's a lot. That was my main problem with my campaign page. Is I tried to communicate as much as possible, and I got plenty of feedback where like, no, we don't need to know that much. So I like hearing people where they're like, yeah, you know what, I liked that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I get that.
Because I'm trying to find the balance. I'm trying to find that balance
It's
of
a fine
too much
line.
info and not enough to be worth anybody's time. So,
Well, I think you're doing a great job on that front. So
all
definitely keep
right,
up the good work, man.
will do.
All right, man. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you guys
Yes.
next time on another live stream. We'll be back, I'm sure, in the next couple weeks for a podcast or something else. So follow us on your YouTube, give us a like, give us a follow if you can, and go check out this Indiegogo. And we will see you guys next time. So please enjoy the rest of your weekend. Everyone, take care.
Take care.